Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. You can find out about this and all of our other author events at skylightbooks.com, where you can also browse our inventory as well as order books online. You can also follow us on Twitter or even be our friend at Facebook. If you would like to talk to a real person, we can be reached at 323-660-1175. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
We're so excited to have Armistead Maupin here. There we go, yeah. There we go. Yes. And I know you know who he is, but I just want to tell you this story. You know, several weeks ago, I was at this event where people were showing videos on their coming out experience, and there was a video from India, and this Indian boy was telling about how he came out to his parents, and what he did was he actually gave a copy of Tales of the City to his mother. And he said, "Mom, I want you to read this book, okay?" And the mother read it, and it's like, "Oh, why is he having me read this book?" And then sort of like, you know, it clicked for him. So we're very happy to have him here. Please welcome Armistead Maupin.
Thank you very much. My friend Taylor Negrin. I'll still tell that story. It was 31 years ago, I guess, when I had my first out-of-town book signing ever, and it was at the Unicorn Bookstore on Santa Monica. And I think it says a lot about my life that when I got terribly excited about the fact that I was going to be greeting my fans for the first time, I showed up there for a signing, and there were 4 people at the signing. Christopher Isherwood, his partner Don Bacardi, and the guy that I had met at Basic Plumbing the night before. If you don't know what that means, ask the person next to you. It's lovely to be here tonight, and I don't know whether or not to read to you or not, since we're so packed, and I want to sign for you and talk to you too. So I think maybe, if it's not a disappointment, we can just talk, just chat. That might be a lot easier. I wish I had my husband here tonight to introduce to you, Christopher Turner, but he told me in a moment of frankness last week that when he came with me on book tours, he felt like Dr. Phil's wife. You know, sort of sitting in the audience going, "Hello." So I totally understand. So he's visiting his family back east. And I've been lonely. I've really been lonely. I just came from Seattle, where I walked into my room, and the hotel there, I guess I don't know whether the Kemptons all do it, but they give you a goldfish to keep you company. And there's a little sign that says, "Hello, my name is Andrea." And I sat there looking at this pathetic creature, sort of wiggling her way around and wondering if that long brown thing hanging onto her was part of her anatomy or was going to sever itself at any time. And the sign of my desperation was that Andrea and I ended up watching Eat, Pray, Love together. Let's talk. Anybody want to ask me any questions about anything? Let's just get going. Yes, sir.
Since it's Veterans Day, would you like to discuss your Vietnam?
It's Veterans Day. Would I like to discuss my Vietnam experience? No, except that it still pisses me off that I was a queer serving my country and I had to hide, and that people still have to do that. My lovely young niece celebrated Veterans Day. Someone I adore. She's just had a baby, but she's been raised in the South. And she had a quote from Reagan about the value of veterans. And I think mostly what I hate on Veterans Day is the way in which people use people who actually do serve their countries in a way to pump up all sorts of false patriotic ideals and support the wrong issues and the wrong ideas. You know, I understand as well as anybody what it takes for somebody to go put themselves into a situation like that. But I don't know what else to say about it, really. I wish we didn't have wars. I don't feel proud of having served in a war that had no purpose whatsoever, it's very hard for us to say that to the young men and women who are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, because their lives are on the line. But I don't know that we should keep using young people as cannon fodder and justification for what a good Republican like Dwight Eisenhower described as the military warned us that this thing was coming. And it has. And war is a way of life. And even our current president seems to understand that principle. So that's what I feel about it. Yes, let's not talk about that anymore. Yes.
Well, a little bit on that is that you once shared an anecdote about how you left
How I left Cambodia?
Cambodia.
Yeah, I was the last GI to withdraw from Cambodia when Nixon sent the troops in. It happened because I was on a little 40-foot boat. It wasn't a ship, it was a boat that was stationed up at what was the 40-mile limit. And the American press, this was really the first televised war, helped to bring it to an end in a way, but somebody from ABC News came and said that we wanted to film our boat because we were going to be the last boat heading down the river into Vietnam, and so it didn't take me long to figure out that the guy who was standing on the stern of the boat when we crossed the border would be the last, have the distinction of being the last GI to pull out of Cambodia. So we had a pump that took water out of the river that we used as a shower. The logical way to not draw attention to myself was to get naked and shower on the stern of the boat. And so I was taking, this long shower waiting for the Vietnamese border to show up when this fucking lieutenant commander clearly had the same goal in mind. And when he saw me, he climbed out onto the anchor winch and was, trying to beat me. We had this ridiculous thing that ended up looking like a figurehead of a ship on reverse where we were. But I made it. And I was, and I have no idea what that distinction means to this day, but I was the last GI out of Cambodia. That's that story. Yes?
I'm going to say something about in Harper. All the hatred that the children are dealing with.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I could have actually talked to those kids to tell them that here I am, 46 and I have survived that kind of conflict and all that kind of terrible initiation of Christ, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, coming from your standpoint, you also were raised as a Southerner, and you were also in the closet. I guess I wasn't able to be in the closet, whether I realized it or not. What is your thoughts of what would you say to these kids? I mean, just as much as everybody's been doing the programs now, saying.
Gets better program. Yeah, well, I said it in 1977 when I had Michael Tolliver write his mother during the initial Anita Bryant campaign, where he says, "No, Mom, I wasn't recruited. No seasoned homosexual ever served as my mentor. But you know what? I wish someone had. I wish someone older than me and wiser than the people in Orlando had taken me aside and said, 'You're all right, kid. You're not crazy or sick or evil. You can grow up and to be a doctor or a teacher like anybody else.' But no one ever said that to me, Mama. I had to find it out on my own." And so, I had everything I had to say about that 32 years ago, and it really saddens me that the message is still not home. I think the brilliance of Dan Savage's campaign is that for the first time he's asked us as adults to take responsibility for that and take care of our children. And I think there was a reaction when Anita Bryant did do the they all recruit children thing that everyone said, oh, well, we mustn't talk about teenagers. Or, teenagers I knew when I was 9 years old, and not in a sexual way. I knew it. It was my nature. I knew that there was something wrong with me because I didn't like the war movies the way the other kids did, So that's happening now. And if there's I try not to be the person who puts the bright, the silver lining on everything, but the reality is that gay kids have been killing themselves for years. The suicide rate has always been higher than that of other kids, and we're just hearing about it now, and we're hearing about it because their parents aren't putting up with it anymore, because there are adults who are saying, this is what happened to my child in this school. So it's progress. We're getting there. We are getting there. We have to believe it as adults that it gets better, because it's hard to sometimes. When this becomes such an endless up and down battle over DADT and everything else, and our friends, promise us things, our friends the Democrats promise us things and then discard us at the last minute when it proves too hot to handle. So we have to keep up the pressure. That letter, by the way, I'm looking at your Scissor Sisters T-shirt here. It's been adapted over the years. As some of you know, the Gay Men's Choruses have a long version of it. Jason Sellards, Jake Shears, and John Garden of the Scissor Sisters have written a beautiful little version of it that will be performed when Tales of the City, the musical, has its world premiere. Starring Betty Buckley as Anna Madrigal. Sometimes I think I've had more than one queen can handle. I sat the other day at the workshop and watched her sing this new it was wonderful to watch those guys who are so talented and who have no vanity about what they do. They if the song they think is not working, they toss it out and do another one. And suddenly when they realized they had Betty Buckley on their hands, oh my God, we've got to write a song for Betty Buckley, So they did this this first act closer that just ripped my heart out, and I was this distance from her when she was trying it out for the first time. And it's very interesting to find in my dotage that I now relate so much more strongly to the romance between Anna and Edgar than I do to the kids that I wrote about, Yes?
Is there a particular person that inspired the character of Marianne Singleton?
There were several young women that I knew in San Francisco that had they were friends. I was just close to them, and I could sort of see what their dilemma was and what it was like to come there. There was also B, by the way. I am very much Marianne. I get a little defensive when people say, "Why did she become such a bitch?" And I say, "What do you mean?" There's something about Marianne that makes me want to sort of put forth the darker side of myself, because I have this sort of sunny exterior, and yet the wheels are turning inside, and I am forming judgments, and I do that. And I think that was the real miracle when we were shooting the miniseries, that this young actress came along who seemed to understand her from the inside out, and as a consequence, the moment that Laura Linney and I looked at each other, we understood how the other one thought. So that's been one of the great pleasures of this experience too, is becoming so close to her over the years, becoming her friend and having her understand that. This book is dedicated to her. A couple of years ago, when Christopher and I got married, I asked Laura if she would come, and we had a small wedding, what we could afford. And my friend Amy Tan let us use her garden. And I asked Laura if she would come and read this James Broughton poem that Chris had read to me on the phone when we were first seeing each other. So she came out and read the poem and broke all our hearts, and then told me she thought it was one of the most beautiful poems she'd ever read. And 4 months later, she called me and said, "Would you come to Connecticut and read it at my wedding?" But I hear sometimes from people who apparently have been telling their friends for 30 years that they were the model for Mary Ann Singleton or Michael Tolliver or any of them, and there really aren't. Some of the minor characters were inspired by local characters. Prougeroux, the gossip columnist, was a sort of spoof of Pat Montandon, a woman named Pat Montandon, who's the mother of a terrific writer named Sean Wilsey. I remember him when he was this high, and he's now blurbed the Mary Ann in Autumn, so I'm feeling really old. He wrote a wonderful book a few years ago called Oh, the Glory of It All about growing up in San Francisco with this extremely unusual family. Yes?
What do you think it is about San Francisco that makes it an attraction to all of these magical books that come out?
It makes it an attraction to...
Yeah, a lot of people write about San Francisco in such a magical way that not any other city there.
Well, there's something just physically about the place, isn't there? I mean, to me, the town is the nature of storytelling itself. You'll go around the corner and see some view you've never seen before in this tiny place. It's perfectly possible. I was doing a sort of public interview in the home of Alexander McCall Smith, who writes the #1 ladies detective agency series, and my favorite, the Isabel Dalhousie series. And he's this amazing old world man who lives in Edinburgh. He's younger than I am, but he's old world, and wears a kilt on the cover of his book. And the Edinburgh paper was there, and that came up, and I said, well, the thing about San Francisco is it's just perfectly possible, as it happened in my story, to run into your wife's gynecologist at the baths. And Sandy sort of drew himself up and said, "Armistead, there are children present," by which he meant his 22-year-old med student daughter. But that, in fact, well, it wasn't my wife's gynecologist, but so many things in Tales of the City that are these preposterous coincidences actually happened to me. So I think it's the small town nature of the place, that it sort of embraces you like a village. And I realized when I was given the opportunity to write this story in the paper and that I could tell it to the whole town, that it was going to serve me very well. And people told me their stories. I didn't know, for instance, that Anna Madrigal's name was an anagram when I created her name. Somebody wrote in and said, "I know what her secret is because her name's an anagram. And it's a man and a girl," and we didn't have computers then, so I wrote it on little pieces of paper and moved it around. And motherfucker, it is. So I acted like I'd been that clever all along. And there's a storyline involving Dorothea Wilson, who goes on to become Dee Dee's life partner and raise children with her, and who is in this book, by the way. She wouldn't let me keep her out. She came in halfway through, and I was so happy to see her again, I could hardly stand it. I had created a character. Somebody wrote in and said, "Shame on you." Up until they said, well, first of all, I was criticized rightfully. The cast was so white. I was fresh out of the South, and I really didn't understand the nature of the city's diversity as well as I should have. So I thought, I'm going to have an African-American character. And I was a mail boy at an ad agency. That's where I got my ad agency from. So I thought, well, I can have this chic black model that works there, and I can make her believable because I don't have to give her any kind of street lingo that would sound ridiculous that I wouldn't know how to do. So I created Dorothea Wilson. And somebody said, shame on you, up until now all of your characters have rung true, but Dorothea is nothing in the world but a white woman in black skin. And I was stricken for about 30 minutes, and then I thought, that is a great idea. So I went to the library at the Chronicle, and I checked out Black Like Me, and found out, which is a book written back then about a white man who darkened his skin, and found out exactly how you could do it. And so it was a growing, it was an organic process. Yes?
Is Laura Linney going to play this?
Well, Mary Ann is, well, not that Laura couldn't do, Laura could do anything, but Mary Ann is 57 in this book, so comparatively, Laura's a spring chicken. There have been no offers to make it into a movie, and I don't know that that would happen. Yes?
When you were writing this, the first books, what part of San Francisco were you living in? What neighborhood?
Russian Hill. I started on Russian Hill. I lived in the Pent Shack. The Pent Shack that figures in this book was where it was my one. I had several little apartments. I had a little place on the edge of Pacific Heights, but I left that because 6 weeks after I'd landed in Oz, I got hepatitis and had to go home to North Carolina. And explain to my parents how one gets hepatitis. But I ended up finding this great little place on Russian Hill that was actually just a tiny little one, barely big enough for the bed. I remember when my parents came to visit, and we went out to one of those unpainted furniture places to buy me a bed, and I was looking at all the double captain's beds with, so we could have drawers under it to have more storage space, and my mother was saying, we'd have much more room if you just got a single bed. You don't really need a double bed. And my father was saying, God damn it, Diana, of course he wants a double bed, Very, very awkward. And I wasn't out at the time. I came out to them in that letter. The one that I was referencing, that was the way I came out to them, in a rather cowardly way, actually, because I had a fictitious character do it to his parents, but they got the point.
Yeah, I was living in the Panhandle at the time.
Were you? Well, we all have our little corner of the world there. I live over in that neighborhood now, not far from there in Parnassus Heights. Uh-huh. Yes, okay. Yes. Pat, is that you? Oh, come here. Prougeroux is amongst us. Can you come here? There's no room, is there? How fabulous. I'm so honored. You're so beautiful.
Can we get a staff person to guide her?
Can you come up here?
Right behind you.
How fabulous is that? If you build her, she will come. Yes, another question until Pat gets up here.
So my question, I don't know how to necessarily phrase it, but I'm curious now that you talked about Mary Ann being a part of you back then. I feel
Sorry. This woman is the best sport in the world.
I am.
She may sometimes. Well, don't piss her off. But
you got it.
She had me over to her house when we found out we were neighbors, and
We go way back.
We go way back.
You don't want to hear him anymore. You want to hear me.
Yeah. Take it away, girl.
Can I tell you a few things about Armistead? The first time he came to see me on Russian Hill in San Francisco, I was so pissed at him. He had written this whole thing in the Chronicle, and he had made fun of my round tables, and I'm like mad as hell. And he had said, Pat, he called, and he said, I really want to write about you for American West, was it, magazine?
New West, yeah.
New West. Well, you know, I'm 82 now.
No,
I forget
it ain't
names
showing, honey.
and numbers. Oh, thank you. But anyway, I was really pissed. So, but anyway, I thought, okay, I'll give him a chance. He comes in. I can't tell you how gorgeous he was. He looked like a young Robert Redfield.
Oh, now I don't even look like an old one.
Darling, I'm getting to that. And you know, sometimes as we get older, for those of you who are still young, we love our enemies even more than our friends.
You taught me a lot. She taught me a lot about the nature of forgiveness, basically. I saw how sweet she was to me after I'd had such... well, you do claim it on the jacket of your own book, so you can't be too humiliated.
No, I love you, and I just think that you're fabulous, and I so admire your writing skill and your abilities. And do you remember that you ate? Do you remember what you ate for dessert at my house once?
No.
Why not? Why? Eskimo pies. Now, who would forget that? So anyway, I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm so honored that you came. Thank you so much.
And I brought you a copy of my book.
Oh, excellent.
Sell.
Her son Sean's name of his book is Oh, the Glory of It All. Pat's book is called Oh, the Hell of It All.
You look so great. Oh, I'm really glad to see you. Let me know where I can get in touch with you.
I will.
Okay. And Brett, you saved a seat for me somewhere.
Are you on Facebook? I bet you are.
Of course.
Well, all right. We'll friend each other. But
no,
who can tell you? Can you help her know and tell her where I am and everything? Yeah, sit there. Sit there.
Oh, and then I can just butt in.
Yeah. I knew that she was still up to her old sassy ways because I saw you selling your James Bond model Thunderbird, whatever it was, on eBay not too long ago.
I drove it here.
You drove it to L.A.?
I'm late tonight.
You drove it here tonight?
Yes.
Oh, my God. You didn't sell it, huh?
Nobody bought it.
Oh, well. You've just met a great San Francisco institution. Anybody else from the book? Yes. Oh, by the way, when Mary Kay Place played Prougeroux in the miniseries, and Pat said, "I want to meet her," and I remember when you first saw a picture of her, you said, "Well, she's pretty." And it turned out they were both from Oklahoma. They had all these things in common, and I think that one of the reasons that Mary Kay got into it so well was that she fell in love with Pat.
And I fell in love with her.
Yes.
Oh, it's still.
Oh, sorry.
And the worst part is I still articulated my question. But I'm curious. Every time I was reading my travels, I felt I'm curious how, I don't want to say autobiographical, but how much you're pulling from who you are now, especially now that you say that there was a lot of you and Mary Ann in the earlier books.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
How much of me is in Michael Tolliver?
Yeah.
It's just still, I use a lot of stuff from my own life. I do. I mean, that's all I have to draw on now. So, it's all I've ever had to draw on. So, yeah, I hang out a lot at the dog park these days. Yeah, very much of it, a lot of it's there. I mean, the things that happen, this is ticklish because then people assume that the adventures of Michael and Ben are always the adventures of me and Christopher. So, I'm a writer. I get to lie, So I use it, but I try to fire it with an emotional truth, and that comes from, pulling from your own embarrassments and joys. Yes, sir.
Was there any part of this book that was more difficult to write than others?
Was there any part that was more difficult to write than others? Let's see. I don't think I can. It's always difficult. This is a weird thing to say because I do it a lot. I do it a fair amount. But anything that's sort of sexually honest, I can put it on paper, but the minute I'm in the recording studio and find myself reading this filth, I don't really think of it that way, but it's funny. I get all blushy and weird about it. But this was this was slower for me, a lot slower. And maybe some of the relationship stuff, you had to be honest. The negotiating of an open marriage, and finding the thing that's real for you, finding the core, and writing about that. I know that I'm getting closer to other people's truths when I'm making myself squirm. So I try not to run away from it. Yes. Oh, hey, Dennis.
Hi. Was there an experience that you got to have, or a person you got to meet because of your books that just seemed random and totally blew your mind?
Oh.
Where you thought, I can't believe I'm here.
Well, I've had the book find its way to people when I wrote Maybe the Moon, which was my only Hollywood novel. That was inspired by a friend of mine named Tammy Detrow, who actually wore the E.T. suit. She was the shortest woman in the world at one point in the Guinness Book of World Records. And so I wrote the novel, and Daryl Hannah optioned it, thinking that she could play the tall, blonde roommate.
Oh, okay.
And so I got to know Daryl and really liked her, and met with her had meetings with her a couple of times in L.A. And this was the time when she was dating John Kennedy Jr. and was having to take this really circuitous route around town to stay away from the paparazzi. And Daryl told me somewhat after the fact, it never became a movie, of course, but she took the book to Jackie Onassis in the hospital when Jackie was dying, as a way to engage her and said, you're an editor, read this book and let me know what you think of it. And Jackie wrote her back and said, halfway through it, I didn't think it'd be a movie at all, and by the time it was over, I realized it was one, or something to that. I've never seen the letter. I think Daryl's holding it hostage until we actually make the movie. But I'm just kidding, of course, but that kind of blew me away in the sense of the real miracle, of course, as you know, as a writer, is that your book can travel and be your ambassador and can sit in someone's mountain cabin for 3 years until someone else picks it up. As a form of art, it's kind of great in that way. Something you can't do on Kindle, by the way. Having said that, Michael Tolliver Lives will be available free on Kindle next week. But people find their way to it. That same book, which has had such a strange history, Jim Courier, who used to be the number 2 tennis champion in the world, was spotted reading it between, what do they call it, changeovers? He was reading a book, to the horror of sportscasters internationally, and I suppose even more horrifying that it was my book. And he recently said, when he was asked about it, he said, I should have the damn book bronzed because nobody ever asked me about anything but that, So, yes.
Besides writing, do you have any other great passions or interests?
Do I have? You're assuming that writing is a great passion. Having written is my greatest passion. I like getting it over with, but I don't have a lot. No, I'm very domestic. I don't mean that I'm a good housekeeper, but I like hanging around the house. I'm very much a homebody. I love my dog and my husband, and I'm happy that I'm in a place when that can just be my life. I remember the great Christopher Isherwood once saying to me, "Life is so much simpler when you've narrowed it down to one person," and I get it. Yes.
You don't recognize me. I'm Susan Beckton. We grew up 2 blocks from each other.
Oh my God, Susan, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
If you'd talked a little longer, I would have figured it out. How are you, sweetie?
Great.
Sooner or later, you'll all be kissed. How are you?
I'm fine. So my question was,
Yeah.
I love all your books on San Francisco, and the first time I went to San Francisco, you just moved there. You probably maybe didn't remember it, just from Charleston. You gave me the great tour. But you never write anything about the South, and I just wondered.
Well, I moved. I didn't write about the Carolinas because I was still in the closet, and I decided to make Michael from Orlando, so that wouldn't incriminate me too much if he was writing his parents.
That's not really the South.
No, it's not. Except in the way it votes, but no, I haven't. I had fantasies for writing a Southern novel when I was little. I was going to write a novel called "Fetch It from Japhet," which is that's all you need right there. It's like it's somewhere in Shakespeare. I've forgotten where, but it's like the sons of Shem and Ham, and where the race is divided, and I guess the Caucasians were the Japheth or whatever, and Noah's sons. Thank you very much. And well, that's as far as I got was the title. But no, I haven't. I don't. Maybe one of these days, but I don't know it anymore. And I've not much anymore. I'm really happy. I brought, if you remember my father, I brought Christopher back to meet him 3 years ago before he died, and we drove him all over town. Yeah, he would have been 96 yesterday. And I thought about that when I heard that the book had hit the New York Times bestseller list, because when I wrote The Night Listener, actually I do write about the South in The Night Listener. I moved it to Charleston, but he knew, and the book was dedicated to him, and he kept it on his desk. I mean, this is a very hidebound Southern conservative, and he very proudly kept it on his desk at his office, where he would come in every day to look at porn on his computer. I got that, by the way, from him. I mean, he was a wonderfully ribald, sweet guy. I mean, that's the part that I remember now, was how funny he could be. He had a real Rabelaisian spirit. Yes? Glad to be here.
I think you sort of answered my question concerning Laura Linney.
No, there are no plans for the series to continue. I mean, it would be very hard to do at this point. It's been 10 years. And I'd have a hard time imagining recasting it, or who knows, maybe. But right now I'm pleasantly occupied with the thought of the musical happening. Yes, sir.
More about the musical. I couldn't be more excited about your favorite band writing music. To try to what's into the musical.
How did the musical come together? Yeah, Jeff Whitty, who wrote the libretto for Avenue Q, says he was on a red-eye flight to London and had the Tales miniseries on his laptop, and the light bulb went off, and he thought, perfect, there's a diva of a certain age, the middle of it, and younger people in a house, and an era. and he brought on board Jason Moore, who directed Avenue Q, and in discussing who should compose it, he sort of said, "Have you ever heard of the Scissor Sisters?" And all I'd heard up to that point was "Filthy Gorgeous," but I got the albums and.
You can almost imagine Michael dancing to some of that stuff back in the 70s.
Well, there are a couple of really great numbers that are sort of period flavored. There's one called "Defending My Life." That's the big jockey shorts dance contest number. So yes, that style serves it very well. But they've also done some beautiful ballads, and they're character songs. They illuminate the people that are singing them in a way that often doesn't happen really in a musical. The style shifts. Mona, when she finally hits bottom and smokes angel dust and gets on the Bustarino, sings a song called "Seeds and Stems." That it is straight out of Janis Joplin. I mean, it's really suits the character. Dee Dee, there's some amazing comedy songs for Dee Dee. Kate Reinders was playing her in the workshop, and she sings not only a song while she's seducing the grocery boy, but an "Oh My God, I'm Pregnant" song from the stirrups at the gynecologist's office. So they've done us proud. Yes.
How far into the books does it cover?
It's the whole book, the whole first book. Mona's storyline with Dorothea has been removed because it was hard enough doing the race change in a miniseries. On stage, it might just get a big groan from the audience, and that would be that. So I think they've very cleverly taken well, as you just heard, the second in More Tales of the City when Mona runs off to Winnemucca. So we've got Mother Mucka is in the musical. And this might be a nice moment to recognize the great work of Jackie Burroughs, who died last month, who played Mother Mucka in the miniseries. Thank you. So that allows us to have a whorehouse number, but it ain't the Dolly Parton whorehouse. The song is called "Ride 'Em Hard and Put 'Em Down Wet." It's very, very funny and very dirty. An applause for a very dirty song from the lady in the back. Yes. Well, I think I'm probably using up the air in here, so maybe we'd better sign some books. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. Don't forget that you can check out this and all of our other great podcasts at www.skylightbooks.com. Today's music was provided by Fragile Gang. You can check them out at MySpace, Facebook, and the iTunes Music Store. Thanks for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.